all of you once again to this webinar series on Bhagavad Gita organized by Wisdom Intellectual Forum Puri and Philosophy Family. Today we are going to have the 21st lecture in this series. It is on the path of devotion. So before going into this lecture, let us see briefly as to what Professor Das has said during the course of his last lecture, which was under the topic the way of devotion or Bhakti Marga. Sorry, it was on what was it? It was the secret of devotion. Rahasya, Bhakti Rahasya. Last class it was on Bhakti Rahasya, the secret of devotion. So during this, the course of the lecture, he made a distinction between love for the finite and the love for the infinite, wherein he clearly said that the love for the finite is nothing but passion, and the love for the infinite is devotion. Passion binds a man and devotion liberates a man. So now the question is how to elevate from the love for the finite to the love for the infinite so that one can have liberation. So he said that one can perform, one can take his life as japa yajna, which means for him doing good every moment in one's life. One has to take every moment as a divine moment. Having said so, he said, time is divine, but time cannot live apart from space. Time cannot be taken, cannot be considered apart from space. If time is divine, so also is space. And we know that all events occur in space and time. Since space and time are divine, so the events that occur in space and time, they are also divine. So, if everything is divine, if one understands that everything around, the time, the space, the events are divine, then one can lead a life of divinity. Now, in the divine life, one can have a scope to realize that spaceless and timeless reality while living in this world. So he has shown the possibility of leading a divine life in the world of events, and this divine life can elevate a man to realize the spaceless and the timeless infinite being while living in this world, performing all these activities in this world. So it was a beautiful lecture that we had last Saturday. So let us now move to Professor Das for having a lecture from him on the title, The Path of Devotion or Bhakti Marga. Over to Professor Das for the lecture.
Am I audible, sir?
Both audible and visible, sir.
Respected Dr. Rao, very esteemed participants of this session, today we shall discuss a very beautiful topic, that is path of devotion. In the last session, we were discussing the secret of devotion, Bhakti Rahasya. Secret of devotion means the wisdom of devotion. That we have to understand what devotion is and why at all devotion is required. What is bhakti and why is bhakti? What and why? To know what and why of bhakti is the secret of bhakti. Therefore, to cultivate love or bhakti in our attitude, in our personality, in our sanskar, we should have very clear knowledge about the metaphysics. Because if we are not aware of the secret of physics and metaphysics both, the secret of the empirical world and the transcendental world both, then we cannot land on bhakti. We cannot live with bhakti. Even we can't understand the secret of bhakti. In the course of our discussion, I had told that from the metaphysical standpoint, landing on the empirical world, if we think of the metaphysics, then we have an all-pervasive entity that is time. Because time is eternal. We have divided time as past, present and future, or the pragmatic division of a day or a month or 1 year. That is our division. We have divided that according to our pragmatic purposes. But time is eternal. Time is the principle of continuity. Similarly, space is eternal. There is no division of space, that this is my plot, this is your plot, this is Puri, this is Bhubaneswar, this is New Delhi. No. We have made so. Time and space, these two concepts can be understood as metaphysical from the empirical standpoints. All other concepts may sound myths or purely metaphysical, those who satire metaphysics is not reality. So, there is a saying in the Bhagavad Gita that whatever you think at the time of death, whatever you remember at the time of death, your next life is accorded, is designed according to your last remembrance, according to your last thought. Whatever you remember at the time of your death, marana kale, the time of death. Here, the time of death means at any time. At any time. You should remember God at the time of death. You should remember God. You should remember God means you should think positive. At the time of death means at any time, because we do not know tomorrow. We do not know the next moment. The next moment is uncertain for us. We are uncertain. We are not sure what will happen after 1 hour, after 1 day, the next moment. So time is uncertain. We can't predict tomorrow. We cannot predict the next moment. That means any moment may be my last moment. So how can I say that at the time of death I shall remember God? How can I know that this will be my last moment? I may die suddenly. Then I may fail to remember God. So because time is because we can't predict future, we can't predict the next moment. So any moment is the moment of death. Any moment. And we should be mentally prepared for that. Therefore, we should not have any luggage with us. We should be luggage free. That any moment we can die happily. We should not have any vasana. We should not have any engagement. We should not have any attachment. Any moment we are ready to leave this world. So at every moment, we should remember God. Remember God means we should think positive. So our mind should be positive at every moment. That means our mind should culture the attitude of gratitude. If at all I live, if at all I see this morning today, this beautiful morning, if at all now I am speaking, that means now I am alive, I am grateful to that divinity. I am grateful to that higher soul or the higher mind. That is the sense of obligation, sense of gratitude we should have all the time. Because we are dealing with many things in this empirical world of which we are not owners. We have not created. We have not created this atmosphere. We have not created oxygen. We have not created water. I have not created this body. These are given to me by the divine gifts. These are the gifts. So for every moment's existence, for every moment's thought, noble thought in my mind, I should remain obliged. I should be grateful to the divinity. Symbolically, we may call it that at the time of death, we should remember God. That means at every moment, we should think positive so that death is not a risk for us. Any moment death comes, we can welcome it happily, readily, because at every moment, I contemplate, I remember the divinity. That means every moment I am positive. Arjuna was disturbed in the battlefield because Arjuna was conditioned by time and space. This time and that space. This is the time of war and this is the place of war. So by this artificial division, he was confused. Dharma is beyond time and space. Eternal truth is beyond time and space. So if you are going to protect dharma, at every moment you should have that attitude, and at every place you should have that attitude, and for every person you should have that attitude. Yeah, at every time I should have that attitude of a Kshatriya. Kshatriya means I should have that attitude to protect dharma. It is not that this time I failed to be a Kshatriya, this time I became confused. A layman becomes confused. Arjuna represents a layman, therefore he became confused in the battlefield. A Sthitaprajna, a wise person, can never be confused at any time, any place, in any circumstances. Nowhere he will be disturbed, he will be confused. Arjuna was confused because Arjuna was conditioned by space, time and person, events, circumstances. Arjuna was biased by this empirical world. If every time I should remember God, I should think positive, then every place, because there is no time without place. Wherever there is a time, it is attached to a place. Suppose I am sleeping, I have no conscious of time. Similarly, I have no conscious of place. No time, no place. Time and place are there, but I am not conscious. The moment I am conscious of time, I am conscious of a place. That means if every time is the time of God or time of God's remembrance, I should remember God, then at every place I should have that attitude. I should have the same attitude. So not that only in the temples I should have the divine attitude, divine feelings. Every place. Because suppose now I am speaking, this is also a time and this is also a place. So this place is also divine. This time is divine and this event is also divine because every event takes place in time and space. Why did we think so? Because it is the glory of a manifestation. It is the glory of a manifestation. If we understood what is the unmanifest, what is the object, what is nirguna, if we understand that, then this reality should be understood. So Jagat Satyam, Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya, this is a state of wisdom. This is a state of wisdom. A realized soul, a man of wisdom can understand, yes, from the Paramarthika Sattva, from the transcendental standpoint, this Jagat is Mithya. The same thing can be said the other way, that the same Brahma, the same truth, each manifested in every time, in every place, in every events, in every things, and in every beings. Both the statements are same. One is discussed from the standpoint of wisdom, knowledge, and the other is discussed from the standpoint of bhakti. Because one cannot worship the unmanifest. One cannot worship the nirguna. Nirguna bhakti or nirguna upasana, that is the highest upasana, very the man of wisdom or the realized souls can only do this. It is not for a common man. It is not for common people. Common people are interested with the manifestations. Yes, this is table, this is salagram, this is Ganesh, this is Jagannath, this is a temple, this is a tree, everything. This is dog, this is cat. All these manifestations are the manifestations of that unmanifest. And every time is his time. Every place is his place. Isavasyam idam sarvam. Isavasyam idam sarvam. God is all pervaded. God is everywhere. So he is the Lord of time and space and events. He is the Lord of time. He is Kala. He is space. And he is the manager of all events, director of all events. This is our feelings. One should feel this way. One should feel this way. When one can feel this way, if he is cultured with the wisdom of metaphysics. That wisdom of metaphysics about devotion, about bhakti, is the secret of bhakti. Without having this background, without having the knowledge about the unmanifest and manifest, the macrocosm and microcosm, Bhuma and Anu, one cannot have direct access to bhakti. That may be a blind bhakti. Bhakti may be blind. One may have bhakti by bias. Blind bhakti, blind love, blind attachment. What do you see? I see not the tree but the Brahman. I see Brahman everywhere. Every time I see him, every place I see Brahman. In every event I feel that is directed by Brahman. This is an attitude. This is an attitude. And this attitude is possible only through this wisdom. So wisdom of bhakti is the secret of bhakti. But today we are going to discuss the path of devotion. That means how that bhakti, how that wisdom of bhakti, or how that feelings of bhakti, love, is manifested in our action. How can we live with bhakti? How can we have bhakti sadhana? This is bhakti jnana. Bhakti jnana. That means we have the wisdom of bhakti. We understand what bhakti is, what asakti is, and how there is a difference between the asakti and bhakti. We understood. Now we have to practice that wisdom in our practical life. We have to live with that wisdom. We have to make that source as the source of liberation. Sa vidya ja vimukte. Similarly, we should have a bhakti for liberation. So bhakti is a marga, or bhakti is a way for liberation, for perfection, for right living. This is called bhakti marga, or the path of devotion. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said jnana karma bhakti samochaya. Jnana karma bhakti samochaya means these three are not three independent ways. These three are connected. These three are three folds, not three types. These three are interconnected. If one is established in jnana, he must be ready to do right action, and he should have right feelings of love. Bhakti, jnana, and karma, these three are interconnected. If one has expertise in one, then he must have expertise in these three. Therefore, a fool is not a bhakta. Generally we think a bhakta is a fool. But in Bhagavad Gita it is said only a wise is a bhakta. Therefore, bhakti yoga comes after the discussion of 11 chapters, because it is the 12th chapter. So before that, in order to understand Bhakti Yoga, we have already discussed Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. That means, without the understanding of Karma and Jnana, we cannot have Bhakti. So Bhakti is not without Karma and Jnana. This is one point. But how can we apply that sense of bhakti in our practical life? As Dr. Rao said, we should have the first sadhana, that is discrimination. That is Viveka Jnana. Without Viveka Jnana, we cannot have the sense of bhakti. Viveka Jnana, or the sense of discrimination, is the first sadhana through which we can practice bhakti. Through that Viveka Jnana, that is the act of rationality, because we are endowed with a mind, rational mind, so we can discriminate between real and unreal, permanent and temporary, and self and not self. This is the first condition. We have to distinguish, we have to discriminate what is real and what is unreal, what is empirical and what is transcendental, what is passion and what is devotion, what is finite, what is infinite, what is self, what is not self, what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, what is permanent and what is temporary. This empirical world is ready for enjoyment. We are easily attached to the empirical world because we get immediate pleasure. We get immediate pleasure from this empirical world. Therefore, this empirical world is very much attractive. This is the sense of a temporarity, temporary pleasure. But we have Viveka Jnana, the discriminative knowledge, if we are able to realize, able to understand that everything is subject to change, so this pleasure is also changing. So this is not permanent pleasure, this is not permanent sukha, this is not something permanent because it is changing. So our faith in the empirical world, that this empirical world gives us immediate pleasure, therefore we are attracted to this empirical world. This attitude will be checked. If we have a Viveka Jnana, that this empirical world can give us only the temporary achievements, temporary pleasure, temporary satisfaction. It cannot give us permanent satisfaction. But our source is the source for something permanent, which remains unchanged in every change. We are searching for that. So that permanence is also the permanence of the pleasure, sukha, ananda. We are searching ananda. We are not searching these temporary pleasures. So how can we distinguish this? We can distinguish this if we have discriminative knowledge or we have Viveka Jnana. And this is the common assist of everybody. Everybody has a mind. Every man is rational. So every man has less or more this attitude that he can distinguish from between right and wrong, between good and bad, between permanent and temporary, between self and not self. We can have this discrimination. This is the first sadhana, that we should have this discriminative knowledge or Viveka Jnana. This is temporary, this is permanent. This is self, this is not self. The second is vairagya. Second sadhana is vairagya. That means non-attachment. That means non-attachment. If we became able to distinguish between real and unreal, then we should be detached from the unreal. This is the second step. First, we have to understand the distinction between real and unreal, permanent, temporary, self and not self. Second, if we understood that something is real and something is unreal, then we should have the sense of a vairagya. That means we should be detached from what is unreal and we should be attached with what is real. We should be detached from what is temporary, and we should be attached with what is permanent. We should be detached from that gives us immediate pleasure, but that this third one was permanent, temporary, real, and unreal. So if we have that knowledge, if we have that wisdom, then we should have the sense. The second step is we should have the sense of a vairagya. Vairagya is not possible without viveka jnana. Many people, what happens? Many sadhus, many sannyasi, they leave this world. They become detached from this world, but they don't have a viveka jnana. So sometimes again they become trapped by this empirical world because they don't know. They have no practice of withdrawal, pratyahara, because they don't know. They don't have the discriminative knowledge. Because of the lack of that discriminative knowledge, again they become trapped. They become trapped by these empirical allurements, empirical world. That means vairagya is possible by wisdom. And that wisdom is the wisdom which discriminates real and unreal, permanent and temporary. Prakriti, Purusha. This is the product of Prakriti. It may be sattvic. My mind may be sattvic. It is better than Rajasic and Tamasic. But this sattvic mind belongs to my Prakriti. It is the product of a Prakriti. This is not a Purusha. I am Purusha. I belong to that Chaitanya Purusha. I am that consciousness. But my sattvic mind is also a product of a Prakriti. This distinction, the knowledge of this distinction should I have. Otherwise, neither I can be attached nor be detached. So attachment and detachment is possible only after the discriminative power or the discriminative knowledge that this is so and so and that is so and so. Here comes the love for the finite and love for the infinite. Why many people get attached with finite things? Why many people get attached with this empirical world? Because they don't have knowledge of the discrimination, because they don't have that wisdom. They have not cultured that wisdom, that viveka jnana, that this is permanent and this is temporary. This modern world, the crisis of the modern world is so. Whatever gives us immediate pleasure, people think that is pragmatic, that is practical, because that is usefulness. Now we take meaningfulness as usefulness. If something is useful, then it is meaningful. If something is useless, it is meaningless. If father becomes useless, then father becomes meaningless. If father is useful, father has pension, and father has good property, then father is meaningful. This is a way of thinking. This is an attitude. So our attitude, our sense of love is rooted in our wisdom. Once we understand, once we are established with this viveka jnana, then naturally we shall be attached with our wisdom. Naturally we are attached with our wisdom. If we think that everything is matter, then we are attached with matter. If we think that everything is spiritual, then we are attached with spirituality. If we think that everything is divine, we are attached with divinity. As you think, so you become. Whatever we think, we so become. As we think, so we become. Whatever our thought is, we become that. Because our thought is our wisdom. And our wisdom inspires us to become and to behave in that way. So bhakti is rooted in jnana. So first is wisdom, jnana, then bhakti, then comes action. The man who is established with right knowledge and right feelings, that person can only do niskama karma. Niskama karma is possible by that person who is established with right knowledge and right feelings. What was the problem of Arjuna? Why Arjuna failed to do niskama karma? Why Arjuna was attached with the consequences? Arjuna was there in the battlefield to fight, and the purpose of the fight was to protect dharma, and whoever will do adharma, he should be killed in the battlefield. He may be father, he may be teacher, he may be anybody else. Then what was the problem with Arjuna? Why Arjuna was confused? Why Arjuna was reluctant to fight against his teachers, brothers, which was not the principle of the war for righteousness. Arjuna was confused because of his lack of wisdom. Because he had lack of wisdom, he had no right knowledge and right feelings. Right feeling means right attachment. We should know with what I should be attached. My attachment with my family may not be the right attachment, and may be right attachment. That depends upon the principle, depends upon the context. Attachment should be righteous. If I have righteous attachment, then that attachment will lead me towards bhakti, and that attachment can save me, can help me getting liberation, attaining liberation. If attachment is rooted with any bias, any blind faith, any wrong notion, false knowledge, then that attachment is passion. So my passion for family and my true attachment for family, they are not same thing, they are different. So how can I know whether this is my passion for family or true attachment for family? This can be known by wisdom. This discriminative power one should have. Arjuna did not have this discriminative power. Though he was very wise, he was a good scholar, he was very much expert in war, but he lacked that sense in the battlefield. That means he was not cultured in that way. So that is the difference between a transcendental mind and an empirical mind. Lord Krishna represents the transcendental mind. That means the mind which is beyond all contradictions, all dichotomies. And Arjuna represents a confused mind. Arjuna represents a rational mind. And in a rational mind, there is a dichotomy between this, to be or not to be, to fight or not to fight, to do or not to do. A rational man is always in the crossroad to do this or not to do this. Because the rational mind is guided by reason, and reason supports both thesis and antithesis. If you decide to do something, you have sufficient reason to do. If you decide not to do something, you have also sufficient reason not to do. So therefore, we have to go beyond mind. We should have to we have to become the witness of our thoughts. Mind is thinking. Mind has different channels of thinking. Mind is thinking this way or that way. But we should be the witness of our thoughts. We should not be trapped by our thoughts. So the person who is witnessing the mind, the thoughts of mind, he is beyond the thoughts. He is not a party to any thought. He is not a victim of any thought. He is not biased by any thought. He is not trapped by any thought. That means he is not in the state of indecisiveness. He can take a right decision in the right time because he is beyond his thoughts. He is the witness of his thoughts. And that state is possible only for a sthita prajna, only for a mind of tranquility. Mind of a tranquility, mind of a sthita prajna. Sthita prajna means the prajna, that wisdom, which is sthita, which is stable. Which is stable. If I understand this truth, that understanding is stable with me. That means I am not confused. Yes, I am convinced of this truth. If this is the truth, then at every time and at every place, I shall not be confused. This is the essence of bhakti. If every time is the time of divinity, if every place is the place of divinity, if every event is the event of divinity, then where is there is chance of being confused? Because everything is designed according to the divine will. I am an instrument. I am just attending the direction of the divine. If I am established with this wisdom, if I am sthita in this prajna, if I am sthita prajna in that sense, then I shall never be confused. So for that, we should have the discriminative knowledge, the viveka jnana, then we can culture the attitude of a vairagya, that is detachment. That is detachment. And the third sadhana, that is called sat sampada. Sat sampada, that means 6 qualities. One is called tranquility, that is called sama. Then training, that is called dhamma, that we have to train our senses. Then withdrawal or uparati. Then tolerance or titiksha. Then faith. Faith means shraddha. The another word of bhakti is shraddha, that is rooted in faith. Then focus or concentration. These 6 are also the third type of sadhana, sat sampad. Tranquility, training, withdrawal, tolerance, faith, and focus. Then mumukhyata, the fourth is mumukhyata, or intense longing for enlightenment. If I am finite, if I understood that this is real and unreal, the first, I am repeating, the first sadhana was the viveka jnana, that I came to discriminate this is real and this is unreal. The second is vairagya, that means if I understood this is unreal, then we should have a sense of detachment from the unreal. This is the second sadhana. In the third step, how this sadhana will be possible, we have to follow the 6 paths. The 6 paths were tranquility, training, withdrawal, tolerance, faith, and focus. The fourth sadhana is the fourth point is, if I understood this is real and this is unreal, then I should become the real. I should become the real. If I understood that the self and not self, the distinction between self and not self, I shall become the self. That intense longing for enlightenment, that intense longing for becoming the truth is the last sadhana, where I shall become the ultimate truth. Number one, I know. Number two, I become detached. I know reality and unreality. Number two, I become detached from unreality. And number three, I become the reality. Very simple. By Viveka Jnana, I distinguish between real and unreal. By Vairagya, I become detached from unreal. By Mumukkhata, I become the real. Three things. By knowledge, by Viveka Jnana, I discriminate this is real and this is unreal. In our practical life also, we have to practice, we have to live this way. In every situation, we should have this sense of discrimination, that this is real, this is unreal, this is permanent, this is temporary. The second point is, if I know that this is unreal, then I should be detached from the unreal. And the third point is, I should be attached with the real. I should be attached with the real. And for that, I should have intense longing, intense desire for that enlightenment, that I should become the real. Brahmavit Brahmaheva Bhavati. That means if I have Brahma Jnana, if I know the truth, then I should become the truth. I should become the truth. Now, this is wisdom. Now, how can we live our practical life? How can we apply this methodology, this wisdom in our practical life? Then what is the theory? Theory is that I discriminate reality from unreality, number one. Number two, I am able to be detached from the unreality. Number three, I become attached with the reality. This is a triangular way. Then come to the empirical world. We have our friends, we have our family, we have this empirical world around us. There are many creatures, many animals, birds, plants. Everything is there around us. Then what is our attitude? What is our knowledge? What is our feelings for this empirical world? We should have to apply this wisdom to this empirical world, to this practical life. Number one, suppose I see a dog. Suppose I see the other. The other means anything who is not me. Who is not me. Suppose I saw a tree. Suppose I saw an animal. The question will come whether it is that Brahma or whether what it is. Is it really a dog? It is really a dog, or it is Brahma. If I am Brahma, I myself is Brahma. If I am not this body, mind and intellect, If I am established with this knowledge, similarly the question will come whether that is Brahman or dog. Brahman means that is dog from the empirical standpoint, but there is the element of divinity in dog. This perception I should have because I am established with this triangular wisdom. Triangular wisdom is that I know the discrimination between real and unreal. I am able to be detached from the unreal, and I am able to be attached with the reality. If this scheme is there, then I can apply that scheme in the world of manifestation. This is my mental exercise. This is my wisdom. But I have to apply that wisdom in the world of manifestation. If I believe that this world of manifestation is the divine glory, is the divine manifestation, if everything is divine, every time is divine, every place is divine, every event is divine, then there will be no problem for me to be attached with any empirical fact in the sense of a divinity. In the sense of a divinity. That is love. That is bhakti. I am giving an example. There is a word empathy. Empathy means when we have concern for somebody, we love someone, we help someone, we understand someone, not from our perspective, but from his or her perspective. Then that is empathy. Sympathy means we help somebody from our perspective. Yes, I think it to be right, I think that it is right, I should help him. This is my perspective. But when I help someone from his perspective, it is empathy. Suppose I am hungry, how can I feel that dog is hungry? This is the difference between us. I may feel the hunger of the dog, whereas the next person, another man, may not feel so. Why there is such difference? The difference is that he is perceiving the dog as a dog. I am perceiving dog as myself. That means there is no other. There is no other. Everything is divine. If I feel hungry, then I can realize the same feeling of hunger of a dog, even of a tree. Even of a tree. When we water plants, the plants look beautiful because plants need water, and we feel that need. As we feel that we need water, we feel that plants also need water. So this attitude is expressed in our personality, in our understanding, when we are established with that wisdom. That I have the discriminative knowledge, what is real and what is unreal, and I have been able to be detached from unreality, and I have been able to be attached with the reality. That means unity in diversity. I can see the unity in diversity. When I can see the unity in diversity, then I should have the sense of empathy. I should have the sense of love, of fellow feeling, kindness, forgiveness. All these things will automatically come to my heart and mind. I shall think that way. So bhakti is a practice. It is not a blind practice. It is rooted in wisdom. It is rooted in wisdom, and it is manifested in action. Bhakti is rooted in wisdom and it is manifested in action. What I feel, that is rooted in my understanding, and what I feel, that is manifested in my action. So what we do is not important. What we do is not important. How we do, that is important. How we do. Suppose you are serving food to someone. The way you serve the food, the way you cater the food, the way you give food, that is important. The way you do something, the way you speak something, the way you act, behave, that is bhakti, that is the way you do something. Suppose you did something mechanically like ATM machine or any machine, that work is not the work that is rooted by bhakti or wisdom. That is a mechanical. ATM machine does not know what is bhakti or wisdom. ATM machine works as it is commanded, as it is programmed. But we can respond to a situation instantly according to our wisdom and bhakti, devotion. That means animals react, but human beings have a capacity to respond. In response, there is a freedom. In reaction, there is no freedom. Suppose I had something against me. Suppose someone does not appreciate me, I become reactive. That means that is a natural flow. That is a natural flow, and that flow is an animal flow. That is not a human flow. That means there is a reaction is natural to action, but response is not natural. Response, there is freedom in response. I am insulted, but I may not feel insulted. I have freedom to act otherwise. So my action is not predicted. My action is not predicted. Nobody can predict my action because I may respond according to my established wisdom and my inner feelings. So everybody's action is unique. Everybody's feeling is unique because the person, when he acts in a way that reflects, that indicates his way of feeling and his way of knowing. Wisdom and feelings are reflected in his response. How one responds to a situation that varies from person to person. Bhakti means Shraddha. Bhakti means also commitment. Commitment means, as I told, every time I remember God, every time I think positive, there is no concession, there is no compromise. Similarly, if I love something, if I understand that this is right, this is dharma, I should have commitment for dharma. Arjuna lacked this in the battlefield. Arjuna failed to have that commitment in the battlefield. That is not bhakti. Arjuna had asakti. Arjuna did not have bhakti. If you fail in your commitment, if you fail in your commitment, that means you are biased by your attachment. So, bhakti means commitment. If this is correct, if this is dharma, if my duty is to protect dharma, then at any time, at any place, at any circumstance, I shall protect dharma. This is commitment and this is bhakti. This is love. If you fail in your commitment at any cost, then that is compromise and compromise is not bhakti. That is politics. So there is no politics in bhakti. There is commitment in bhakti, that I am committed. Therefore, there is a difference between conduct and character. What you did accidentally, that is your conduct. You are very much pragmatic. But character is your sanskara. That means you can't do otherwise. You means this action. This person means this action. Because that is his character. So bhakti is the character. Love is the character. Compassion, forgiveness, sense of empathy, these are characters. These are not conducts. If one has a very good character, that means one is established with the truth. Who is having a good character? That triangular sadhana. That person who has understood the distinction between reality and unreality, number one. And he has been able to be detached from the unreality, number two. And he has been able to be attached with the reality. Very simple. This is real, this is unreal. If this is unreal, I should be detached from it. If this is real, I should be attached to it. This empirical world is really the glory of God, is really the manifestation of a God. If I understood this way, then I shall be detached from the wrong notion of empirical world, and I shall be attached with the divine glory of a manifestation. Then naturally, I shall be inclined to this empirical world in the positive way, in the divine way, because my vision has been changed, my wisdom has been changed, my feeling has been changed, and naturally my action has been changed. So as your wisdom, so is your feeling, and so is your action. Therefore, jnana, karma, bhakti, samuchaya. We cannot separate. We cannot have one sadhana without other two. Not karma without jnana and bhakti, not jnana without karma and bhakti. Suppose jnana, that is wisdom. We say sadhavana labhyata jnana. That means one who has intense longing for wisdom, that is shraddha, that person is qualified for knowledge. If we don't have shraddha for knowing something, if we do not have any commitment for knowing something, then we cannot attain that highest knowledge. So shraddha is attained by bhakti. And bhakti is groomed by wisdom. That means wisdom and bhakti both are complement to each other. Similarly, suppose one is established with wisdom, but in action he is a failure. He cannot act accordingly. That means from that it is evident that he has no wisdom at all. This is fake knowledge. This is his fake declaration that he is a man of wisdom. If you are established with wisdom, that must be translated into action. Wisdom and action go hand in hand. If somebody's vision is higher, his action will be higher. Wisdom and karma, they complement to each other. Similarly, devotion and action, or bhakti and karma. As your feelings, so is your way of karma. What you are doing is not important. How you are doing that is important. How is important. How did you do this work? How you behave? How you speak? That is important. That how is your feeling. That how speaks of your feeling. So that makes your action more meaningful. That makes, and that is the real karma. Your feeling, your intention behind action is the real action. The action that you mechanically do, biologically do, is not real action. The intention behind the action, the feeling behind the action, the knowledge behind the action is the real action. Man is bound by that. Man is not bound by action. Man is bound by the jnana and bhakti behind the action. So which action binds? The action, the mechanical action, the non-voluntary action does not bind us. Only the voluntary action binds us. That means either binds or liberates. That depends upon the intensity of our feelings and the depth of our wisdom. That means jnana, karma, bhakti, samuchaya. These three sadhana, jnana sadhana, karma sadhana, and bhakti sadhana make our personality complete, perfect. So bhakti means commitment. Commitment. As a mother is committed to the child. Father may vary, father may differ. Father may differ. Sometimes father may get angry. Father may behave indifferently. But mother is committed to the child. As the God is committed to this creation. As sun is committed. As moon is committed. As a tree is committed. A tree gives its shadow till it falls down. If we are cutting a tree, till it falls down, it gives shadow. That is the commitment of a tree, the commitment of sun, the commitment of water, the commitment of air, the commitment of oxygen, the commitment of moon, the commitment of nature. Similarly, we should be committed to our virtues. We should be committed to our values. That is character. Conduct is political. So I do this now, and if situation changes, I shall do something else. I think this way, I did that way. But character is rooted in our wisdom, feelings, and action. As I think, so I feel, and so I act. That is my character. But intelligently I did something, did something mechanically, intelligently. That is not my character. So bhakti is the commitment. Bhakti is the sacrifice. Bhakti is the detachment. Generally we think bhakti is the sense of attachment. Bhakti means attachment. But that is attachment, I told two things, vairagya and attachment. Vairagya from, detachment from unreal, that is bhakti. Attachment with real, that is also bhakti. Therefore, one should culture both the art of attachment and detachment. How is it possible? It is said in the Savasya Upanishad in the first verse, Tena Tektena Bhanjita. That means attachment is not bad. We can be attached to this empirical world. We can be attached to anything, but with the sense of detachment. Vairagya bhava re ame attached heipariba. We can be attached with the sense of detachment. Attachment through detachment. Attachment through detachment. Raga through vairagya. Raga through vairagya. Attachment through detachment. From this attitude, our action will be perfect and we shall get liberation. Without bhakti, without knowledge, we cannot do the right action. And if we fail to do right action, we cannot attain liberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Das, for yet another nice lecture. Well, we are not having any synopsis for this lecture because we made it a promise during the course of the annual function that there would be no more synopsis. So, with just mentioning, taking the thread from the last class, Professor Das showed us the way to bhakti or devotion, and by making first of all clear that unless and until the secret of bhakti is not known, one cannot travel on the path of bhakti. The secret of bhakti, what he calls, is the jnana behind bhakti, which has to be achieved, and without that we cannot move in the path of bhakti. So it is a preparatory stage, and that would help one to discriminate between the real and the unreal, the temporary and the permanent, the finite and the infinite, the good and the bad, okay, the right and the wrong. So the passion and devotion. So this knowledge, the Viveka Jnana, is very essential in the path of bhakti. Otherwise, will be attached to more of the finite sort and will not be elevated to the love for the infinite. So the Viveka Jnana is very interesting. Once this discriminative knowledge is attained, one can carry on vairagya, a sense of detachment to all that is finite, all that is temporary, all that is empirical, all that is rated as passion. So there is detachment in vairagya, and by taking the paths of tranquility, say training, having a sense of tolerance and all that, one can develop a sense of longing for the infinite, because there is already a sort of commitment to a sort of commitment, a sort of longing for the infinite. One may land in the path of bhakti, and very nicely he has taken that bhakti is not a separate mode of liberation, distinct and different from the karma marga or the jnana marga. Rather, it takes jnana, karma, and bhakti samuchaya. They are supporting to one another. Rather, more interestingly, what I see in Professor Das' interpretation, he rather takes jnana and bhakti as the preparatory steps rather for right conduct. So normally we take jnana, karma, bhakti, samuchaya, but some way in the format we find in Professor Das that he takes jnana, bhakti, leading to a righteous action, a sort of action of nishkama karma. So that is the objective. That is all about the Gita Jnana that was given to Arjuna by Krishna. So very nice take from this lecture. Now, if anybody has any question, they are requested to post in the chat box. Well, I see somebody saying something in the chat box. Well, it is by Sramani Misra. So you said during the course of your last lecture, and you even you have taken the thread of the last lecture even today. You say that every moment is divine, every space is divine, so every event in space and time is divine. So Sramani Misra has a doubt in mind: when you take every moment as divine, how do you take those negative events, the antisocial events, the corrupt events, the wrongs, the misgivings, the tensions, the social evils that happen out there in this world, how do you take these things in consistent with what you have said, that every moment is a divine moment, every event is a divine event? How do you take this?
This is a very beautiful question. Everything is divine. It is a state of understanding. It is a state of realization. Okay. When we have Viveka Jnana, and when we have developed the sense of a Vairagya from something unreal, and we are already established with the reality, in that state you can claim that everything is divine. Otherwise, if you have still a distinction between good act and bad act, social act and antisocial act, then you are with the empirical world. You have to go beyond that scheme. That was also the question of Arjuna in the battlefield. He asked that question to Lord Krishna, that how can I fight with my brothers? How can I fight with my teachers only for this kingdom? I don't need kingdom at the cost of the bloodshed of my relatives. That was also his question. Therefore, Lord Krishna showed him the Vishwarupa, that you see the transcendental scheme, that all your dichotomies, good, bad, good, evil, are not there. So from a higher standpoint, you have to see that life and death are same. The wounded dog and a very beautiful woman, they are same. Because we are beyond all types of division. It is a state of realization. So everything is divine in the sense, we can say that everything is human. Can we say that everything is human? Can you create plants? Can you create a sun, moon? Can you create water? Can you make them function? No. Everything is not a human. Everything is not natural. We can say, if we say everything is natural, that is also in the sense of divinity. Everything is divine means everything is transcendental. And that can be realized in a particular state of consciousness. If we have the distinction between good and bad, social, antisocial, then we have to understand that in that way. Yes, this is social, this is antisocial. This understanding is good. But for a realized soul, death and life, success and failure, they are all same. Enemy and friend, they are all same. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Das. To Shravani Mishra, Madam, what Professor Das has said, one more thing that comes to my mind, that the negative acts, the wrong acts, the antisocial acts, okay, well, they are there in this world. They cannot be avoided. We are in this world. And we are in this world along with such negative acts or wrong acts. But the Viveka Jnana that Professor Das was talking helps us to discriminate what that is right and what that is wrong. This knowledge that these acts, these negative acts, these wrong acts will lead us or will bind us, will take us in a wrong route, will put us in more of trouble. So this is got from the Viveka Jnana. And there lies the divinity. Once you have a characterization that these negative elements are there, and you have a knowledge that these negative elements, if you are attached to, you will fall in a series of, say, a bondage that is leading to finally a sort of bondage. So Once you try to keep away from this, this is the divinity that lies in the antisocial acts also. From the antisocial acts also, you see, the discriminative knowledge makes no sense if there are no negative acts. Day makes no sense if there is no night. Everything is social, everything is right, then what? There is no talk of discriminative knowledge. The question of discriminative knowledge arises only when there are negative elements. These negative elements make us realize that we should be free from those. We should have a sense of detachment to all this. We should have a vairagya bhava to this, so that we can set foot on the path of liberation, the bhakti way or the jnana way, whatever way it may be. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the response by Professor Das. Well, I don't see any other question in the chat box, but one thing.
I'll take
Yes.
Actually, we do not see the total project. We take an incident accidentally from a perspective, from one context only, that this happened this way. But the story does not begin from that. It has a long past, and it has a design. So this is the part of the creation that we are ignorant of. We don't know the total scheme. As a child does not know the total scheme of parents' decision. Similarly, we do not know the total Vishwarupa, the total scheme. So we are acquainted with a part, and when we give a judgment, we give a judgment about the whole, that this is good and this is bad. So taking the part, we judge the whole. That is the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Das. Well, I don't see another question, but one query that comes to my mind. At many points, you say you take Arjuna as a layman, but have some reservations on considering Arjuna as a layman. He is not even a common man. Had he been a layman or a common man, he would have never been qualified to get the Gita Jnana from Krishna. A layman can never understand what Krishna is saying. So maybe we may take Arjuna as a patient in the battlefield. Well. We can take a sort of a mental disorder, a sort of a patient side of situation, a sort of confused state, a rational situation where there is a lack of discriminative knowledge in the bhakti, in the battlefield. So that was the confusion in the mind of Arjuna, and that is the sort of situation that Arjuna was, and Krishna was trying to take out Arjuna from that state of affairs. So it becomes quite irrelevant if we consider Arjuna as a layman. So how do you say this? Arjuna is not a layman, he's not even a common man. Had he been a common man or a layman, he would never been qualified to take the Gita Jnana.
Arjuna was better. Arjuna was better than others. Arjuna was better. Arjuna, I told that Arjuna was very wise. Arjuna was a very good scholar. He is a very good warrior. Arjuna was better. But there is a possibility of a confusion for Arjuna. That possibility was not there for Lord Krishna. This is the difference. Because the Lord Krishna's mind is Sthita Prajna. Arjuna was not Sthita Prajna, but Arjuna was wise. Arjuna was wise. Therefore, Arjuna became confused. Arjuna was wise. This is truth. Arjuna was a very good student. That is truth. And being a good student, Arjuna became confused in the battlefield. That is also the fact, and it is possible. We are qualified, but sometimes in the real field, in the practical life, in the real situation, we fail to apply our intelligence, apply our rationality. That type of a personality is Arjuna. But that means he is not Sthitaprajna. But there is possibility of being a Sthitaprajna in Arjuna, which is not in Duryodhana. Okay, so this possibility is there. Therefore, Arjuna was told the entire Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you. Well, you carried that content, but at certain points you often make a use of Arjuna as a layman, which we shouldn't. Layman, common man doesn't apply. Well, you corrected that. He's a wise man, but somehow he's lost. He's a rational mind, we said it. But at the same time, sometimes you make a usage, he's a layman, common man. Well, we may comfortably. Well, Kalyani Sadangi madam wants to say something. Yes. Namaskar, madam.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Narayan sir. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, madam, very much.
Am I?
Well,
Okay.
audible.
Good evening to all. I congratulate Pramod sir for his analytical exposition of the concept of bhakti. But I want some clarification which is related to the previous question which is raised by Om Narayan sir and answered by Pramod sir. Actually, I do agree that we begin with the discriminative knowledge, that is Viveka Jnana, and then we proceed with bhakti to the right conduct. Yes, I do agree. But when we apply this scheme to the practical life, real life situation, to the practical life, we always stumbled upon some issues here and there which we are unable to address. I just quote something in the deliberation of Pramod sir. He told that we should develop a sense of no other. There is no other for me. So suppose that means we have to be empathetic towards others, things and beings. Yes. Suppose I am empathetic. Suppose while I am traveling to the college, I just see that there is an accident. Okay. Sure. I will just be there to help the victim. But you see, in the process, I will get victimized. I mean, I have to accompany the victim to the hospital, there are so many consequences, legalities, socialities. I have to go for police station if required for many a time. So that really hinders me to be empathetic, to be rather what usually we, the maximum people, though we have the knowledge, though we love to help others, though we want to develop the sense of no other, but still there are some real life situations that hinders this attitude of ours. So my problem is that how to address this sort of problem when we really face in our practical life situations. This is my problem. I just request Pramod sir to.
Yes, a similar question has been raised by Dr. Abha. Is Sthitaprajna a practical? Is Sthitaprajna practically possible? So a similar.
I want to be like that.
Yes,
I want to be like that.
Yes,
I want to practice all that is discussed.
Yes,
but
yes.
still there are some bothernecks.
Yes,
so
yes,
how
yes.
to overcome this? This
Yes,
is
yes.
mine.
Yes. So in addition, in the lines what you have said, even similar thing has been asked by Abha. So both the things, Professor Das, please address to. Professor Das. Pramod sir, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, sir. Now audible.
Hello. Am I audible, sir?
You're audible, sir. Audible.
Dr. Alan Sarangi, Madam said, and Abha, Madam said, you also said, so Madam also said the same thing. This is our life. We all face that. All these situations.
Sir, not clear, sir. Bit loud. Not clear.
Hello.
Now clear. Now clear.
What colleagues Madam said and others said about the life situation, about the practical problems of our life. That is the fact of that is our knowledge, that is our management, that is our situation, that is our circumstance. But we have to go beyond. We have manage our life in a better way. That is the purpose of life. Whatever said, that's the fact of life. Yes, that some problems happen to us. That is natural. We admit. But many people respond to this differently. The way I address.
Sir, you are not audible, sir, properly. Sir, Pramod sir.
Hello. Am I audible now?
Sir, now audible. Sir, now audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
I told that whatever you told and others told, that is the fact of our life. Acknowledge that, we admit that. That is the real situation of our life. Take these situations granted. Yes, such things happen in our life. We have to manage such problems. We have to solve these problems. And we can solve according to our own vision, according to our own.
No, sir, not audible.
Okay, I am just going to my laptop. Now I am audible. Hello.
Yes, sir. Clearly audible.
Okay. Whatever Dr. Kalyani Madam said and others said, that is the fact of our life. That is the situation of our life. Yes, we acknowledge that. We face that such situations in our life. There is no second opinion of it. But the question is, these empirical problems, this empirical world, is there outside us. But our response to such problems is different. The way I deal with such problems, you may not, Swami Vivekananda may not, and other realized persons may not. Our responses are different. And that difference is the difference of our wisdom, of our feelings. What you think, the way you think, the way you feel, similarly, that is reflected in your action. I mean that problems are same, suppose problems are same thing happened, but that can be responded differently by different people. This is my response.
Well, sir, my connectivity was lost. Anyway, I cannot comment on this. What you have said, I could not listen to you because for 5 minutes I
Sir,
was.
now am I audible to you?
Yes, 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 yes.
I told that what Dr. Kalyani Madam said and others said, that is the fact of our life. They described the situation of our life, the practical situation of our life. Such things happen in our practical life. Yes, we agree. We agree. Such confusions are natural. What Arjuna had in battlefields. That is natural situation of every man, that every man gets confused in some situations. Every man, sometimes we get cheated. Okay. But the question is how we respond to a situation. That depends upon our wisdom. That depends upon yoga karmesu kausalam. That is the skill. We have to know the skill, how to tackle the situation, and that tackling, that solution, that response is different. The way I shall respond, not to Kalyani Madam, not a realized soul like Vivekananda, because the visions are different, responses are different. That is my response.
Yes, thank you. Well, the responses will differ. So, a man with we were speaking of empathy during the course of your lecture. A man with empathy can only have recourse to this. Otherwise, if he sees as if the accident on the road is his own accident, or the accident on the road is the accident of his own man or own people. Suppose we see an accident, we move because we see, oh, he's a different person, it's not related to us. But see, but if you see that he is the father, your father has met the accident on the road, will not go away, will get attached to the accident. So that's not happening. When we have a sympathy for the accident, what has happened, but there is no overflow, there is no coming of empathy coming into play there. So empathy plays a vital role there, irrespective of what consequences are going to happen, irrespective of all legal formalities that we have to maintain. So if there is an empathetic flow, when we see the pain of the patient or the man who had the accident, if we see ourselves in him, oh, that's a great elevation. Well, only few can have sort of pain and empathetic feeling. So for them it is possible. So you are talking of the levels of responses. So this is a possibility. A man who is empathetic, who sees the accident faced by the man, he is not a different man, he is my man if he sees that way. And or if he sees the pain as his own pain, there is an empathetic overflow there. And there is no way, with whatever work he is going, he will be away from that accident. He will get connected with the accident as if he has faced the accident. So that empathetic flow has to come. And that's what Bhagavad Gita is trying to preach also. Yes.
Sir,
Sir.
I shall add only two sentences.
Carry on, sir.
Now this is very personal experience. It may be treated as a myth, because when the experience is not realized by others, they can't understand, because it is very personal. My conviction is that you are your world, I am my world. My wisdom responds my world. Your wisdom responds your world. You can't describe the same world situation, life situation equally to all. For example, my world means whatever happens around me, that is my world. The scenario will be changed. The accident will become incident. The curse will become blessing. We think it is a curse, but it is a blessing in disguise. We think that he is an enemy, but he is a friend in disguise. That is the personal experience, vision. It is not an accident, it is an order. It is a discipline. But we can't say so in public. Then the public will say this person has become mad. It is personal experience. I am my world. My vision is my world. So that is my response. Problems are same. Suppose that is also parenting. I am giving an example. Children will commit mistake, but the parenting is different. How I shall I shall administer my children, that will be different from your techniques. Your technique is your technique. Who is successful, I don't say, but our responses are different. A teacher is also different. All teachers can't teach in the same way, but the lesson is same. Classroom is same. Blackboard is same. But teachers are different, parents are different. Similarly, persons are different in relation to situations. So, this is the way. So, for a positive person, everything is positive. A big stone will come, but it will touch your body like a flower. A big problem will come, but it will be melt on the way. It will not touch you. This is very personal experience. Many people will threaten you, but nobody can touch you. This is your world. So your wisdom is your world. Your feelings is your world. So we live in the same physical world, but our psychological world, our spiritual worlds are different from each other. Therefore, our responses to the problems are also different. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
okay. So, very good response. Your response reminds me of a statement which I have recently come across by Sadhguru, who said, there are no problems, there are only situations. So this shows that how do we take an event? It may be an accident, it may be anything else. How do we take it? The way you said, it's a possibility. That empathetic situation is a possibility. And we are not empathetic, it's a different question. We are not leading a life that way, it's a different question. But an empathy is possible. An elevation to that height is possible. And that is what is the real meaning, what even Sadhguru said, there are no problems, there are only situations. How do you look at the situations depend upon your wisdom. Thank you, sir. Thank you for a very good response. So I don't see any other questions in the chat box, and I don't see anybody unmuting. So thank you for a very brilliant lecture and also for the responses that you had with the poses that were put before you. So thank you very much. Now it's time for proposing a vote of thanks. Now I request Srimati Swarnalatha Tripathi Madam to propose a vote of thanks. Over to Swarna Madam.
Namaskar to all. Am I audible?
Yes, audible, madam, audible.
Thank you. I thank all the participants for being with us in the lecture series of the Bhagavad Gita. Today we had beautiful session. I extend my deep sense of gratitude to all the participants for their presence and participation. We are all thankful to the speaker Pramod for delivering a beautiful talk on the path of devotion. He explained how bhakti is reflected in action and how bhakti leads to liberation. We cannot forget the contribution of Dr. Rao sir in coordinating and moderating all the sessions of the Gita lecture series. Wisdom Forum is grateful to Dr. Rao sir. I thank you all and hope your participation in the Gita lecture series on every Saturday. Thank you, Pranam.
So, thanking all the participants and all the question raisers. I thank Swarna Madam too for proposing the vote of thanks and for being connected with the webinar series so consistently. Thank you, Swarna Madam. Many thanks to you too. So, thanks everybody. Now I declare the meeting closed.